What is up, CSGs? Your Houston Rockets took another close L to the Miami Heat at home, 104-100, in a game where our shooting lost itself in the fourth quarter. And, of course, we had some scuffling going on between Amen Thompson and Tyler Hero, where Amen Thompson basically body slammed Tyler Hero, picking him up as a child and throwing him to the ground. Similar to the scene from Toy Story where the kid Andy dropped Woody on the floor. That's what it looked like to me, the way Tyler's legs were flailing. But the loss itself, bad loss, not a great loss coming off of the Timberwolves game. We're going to talk about that in this episode. But just from the game overall, it came down to fourth quarter shot making. The Rockets shot 20% from twos in the fourth quarter. And let me see, we shot 26% from threes in the fourth quarter. This has been a pattern repeatedly, and we're going to try to get to the bottom of that in this episode as well. But a tough loss, another gut-wrenching loss. At least we got something with the fight. Part of the fallout from the fight is, I'm sure maybe as I'm recording this, they've already released it, but guys are going to be suspended. I'm pretty sure Amen Thompson is probably going to be suspended for a couple of games. That body slam was pretty significant, bro. Like, from a professional athlete standpoint, to me, that's worse than a punch. Like, he threw bro down like he was just nothing, bro. So I think the league is probably going to come down really hard on him there. You had Jalen going after Terry Rozier after Terry tackled the man. Jalen jumped on his back, had bro in a chokehold, and then all the teams converge. So I'm sure Jalen is probably going to miss a game or two. I'm not sure who else they're going to. Alp got in there a little bit. He was pushing. I'm not sure if they just see that as kind of trying to break it up. Coach Udoka was tossed. Prior to that, Fred VanVleet was tossed. Y'all already know how I feel about, some of the stuff that goes on with the Rockets and the scuffles. I like it, and I know, you want to get some red meat. It's something, but some of this stuff is going to hurt us down the line. I already know it. I think that the reputation is good to a point. It's bad when it hurts you. And I think this whole fiasco, even though it does get the juices flowing, and, at least I put a tweet out with a meme of Denzel saying, I'm from around the way, I'm leaving with something. Amen Thompson is going to leave with something. You know what I mean? He didn't have his best defensive game because Hero was cooking. Hero was cooking everybody, but probably one of Amen's toughest matchups I've seen him go against. And I think the frustrations boiled over. Hero's probably talking a little trash. And he said, I'm going to leave with something, bro. And he left with a choke slam. But I think that at some point, bro, like, we really have to be measured. It's one thing to be a team that is uber aggressive, and we're going to have this bad boy mentality about us, which I love. I love it, but you got to pick and choose your spots. You got to kind of make it count, bro. In a winnable game, these are not the moments you want to do that, when the outcome of the game can be decided by your actions. If it was a game, most coaches or players would get tossed if the game is out of reach. I think a lot of this stuff happened, even with the Fred one. The Fred one I thought was BS. Like, with that specific ref, who I don't think likes us, Fred was talking to him, and Fred gave him a little body bump, but that's just talking, bro. That's just like a very subtle way of saying, hey, I don't like what you just said. To me, in the heat of the moment with athletes, when their emotions are that high, you cannot, as a referee, you have to have some grace to how you interpret things, bro. Like, I've seen refs get touched. I know people say you can't touch. I've seen refs get touched. I've seen guys grab the ball out of refs' hands. I've seen them yank the ball out of their hands. I've seen them kind of body bump them walking away. And it's really, to me, it's up to the subjectivity of the referee to make that decision, whether this warrants a hostile action towards the ref. And I think bro is just on a power trip. And once that started happening, it just kind of let things escalate out of control. And, I'm not going to blame the ratings on the referees. I don't think that's really accurate. I think there are other factors there, mostly because people are just not smart and they don't have the attention span to really just watch sports and really enjoy the value of it without trying to tear down players The whole stand culture, people just being real casual, highlights being a thing, the whole access to cable television versus local television versus paying a paywall behind watching your favorite sports team. I think all of those factors are why the ratings are down. The refs is not one of them. We've been dealing with refs, but it has been egregious. And the Rockets have really not helped themselves out. I love the grit and grind because, it's a great turnaround from where we were under Steven Silas, but there's a limit. I'm just forecasting that on this stretch of games where we've lost 2 winnable games that if we had won, we would have cushioned ourselves for some of these other games coming up. We lost 2 winnable games on a stretch where we have Dallas, Boston, and Lakers coming up. And with how close the West is, the standings, 3 games out from, whether you're second place, you could drop down to 7th or 8th if you lose 3 games within 3 games of each other. So as good as this season's going, it is on a razor's edge as far as being a top 3 seed, top 4 seed, and being a 7 or 8 seed. So we cannot drop these games because we have to assume that after this bad stretch of, back-to-backs and, playoff team after playoff team after playoff team, that gap leading up to the All-Star break is really when we start crashing out. And to me, these games now, you got to be able to try to win as many as you can, especially against these good teams that you're competing for those playoff spots for. So, that in itself is something that we're going to have to make up for. Now, with these next games, if you don't have Amen Thompson, you don't have Jalen Green, so there goes pretty much 2/3 of your starting backcourt, or however you want to see it. It does leave a lot of open areas of weakness exposed, right? Point guard was already one of our weaknesses. And so now you have, if Fred is playing, I'm not even sure what his status is for bumping a ref. If Fred is playing, you're looking at Fred and Aaron Holiday and, Dylan Brooks, Jabari. Maybe that works for a game or two, but, I think Dallas is missing Luka, so that's going to be a big deal. I don't know what the Lakers are looking like after the trade. Boston is Boston. If you can squeak out going 2 for 1, I think that'll be a big dub for us. And just trying to make it through that. I'm not sure where Tari Eason is or what's going on with him. He has a leg injury. I'm not sure if it's just a flare-up of overuse and his muscle fatigue or whatever it is, or is there a significant injury to him? He has missed a few games coming into now. He was definitely needed down the stretch, and he will be needed. I wonder if this expedites his comeback. But the game yesterday, just a game of just the way it has been recently, right? Rockets do really good in 3 quarters. The opposing teams, they will switch the game plan in the 4th to squeeze down, shrink the court, and force us to shoot, and we can't shoot. It comes down to it. We just can't shoot. The Rockets are the worst 3-point shooting team in the league. No way to cut, especially in the 4th quarter. We're dead last in true shooting percentage, which includes free throws, 2-pointers, and 3-pointers, and we're dead last in EFG as well. And bottom of the league in every shooting category you could think of. So this is definitely something that is going to come up and it's going to be an issue in high leverage moments. That's really what it comes down to. I contemplated doing a 30-some game review in the last game against Timberwolves because it was supposed to be our 31st game because it was a back-to-back. So, every 10 games we do a check-in of where the Rockets are. I wasn't going to do it after the Timberwolves loss because that was such a gut-wrenching loss. But I changed my mind and said, you know what, I'm going to do it the next game because for sure I feel good about it. We're going to beat the Heat. And we didn't beat it. And we had a weird loss again. But I'm going to do it today because if I keep going like this, we might not do a damn video till it's 40 games reviewing the team. So we're going to review the team and we're going to look at certain things that needs to be discussed. I think one of the things that has come up over the past few games is the struggle of the backcourt. The Rockets backcourt right now is struggling, and it is no small struggle. Like, these dudes is not playing good right now. I have a theory that I'm going to try to explain out. Disclaimer, as I do in all these videos, please do not use any of this for your agenda purposes. I try to be as fair and objective as possible as I give you this information. I try to interpret it to the best, leaving a lot of room for things that could not be factored in. This is not like, oh yeah, this is it. But this is my this is what I've seen by me going through the data and some of my opinions, right? So this is not like the end all be all, because I hate when people do that. Like they'll take something that you say within context and take it out of context to push a narrative on a player. I really, I don't want that to be said about anybody, because there could be a multitude of factors I don't have access to even make these judgments. But I'm going to lay out, the numbers I've seen. And obviously I watch all the games, watch a lot of film on the Rockets, and try to see what it comes out of. So we're going to go through, and right now it's the first 32 games of the season, because we missed 31 and 2, 30 and 31. So we're going to talk about the first 32 games of the season. Now, the question for the first 32 games at this point to me is the backcourt. Once again, the backcourt. We have a backcourt issue right now. And the backcourt issue to me is really what's causing a lot of these late game losses, a lot of these collapses with the shooting, because there is a significant drop off in play in the clutch moments for our team. We'll discuss that. We'll also discuss, who is the person that is, the reason for it. Is it Fred issue alone? Is it because Fred is bad, or is it because Jalen is bad? We'll try to isolate them out and see how they're impacting winning on the team all together with the other players, and to see, what can we take away from that. All right, so first off, first 32 games, let's just do some house cleaning just to give y'all an update. Offensive rating for the team right now, 112.4, which ranks 13th in the NBA. That's up 5 spot. I think we're 18th last time. The relative number hasn't really changed. The relative ranking in the league has. The league is on a down year offensively right now. Definitely a down year offensively. If you look at it, the difference between number one offense in the league and where we are kind of middle of the pack is about like a 10-point difference, which if you're looking at it on a points per possession basis, which is what this is based on, that is like the gap between America and China. That's a huge gap. That's a huge gap. That's like the whole Pacific Ocean in net rating, like a plus 10 difference between the first offensive team. So there's like there's a hierarchy of offenses in the top 10 that are like really, really good or above average. And then you get to like where we are. I think we're like the last line of below average offense. Then it just kind of drops off a cliff from there. So pretty below average. Defensive rating holding strong at second behind Oklahoma City. 105.9, no changes there. The defense is real. That is our calling card. That is Ime's fingerprint on the team. Net rating plus 6.5. That net rating is shrinking as more data comes in, which is expected. A positive net rating of over 5 to me is still significant. So we're still a decent team, pretty good team. And to me, this is where Ime comes in. I know we're going to talk about the offensive issues the Rockets have. I think Ime Udoka, we were having a spaces last night discussing his just his tenure so far. I know there's a lot of people that may be turned off by the lack of offensive structure, the lack of philosophy, et cetera, et cetera. We've talked about it on this channel. I think he's done a fabulous job establishing a culture. I think he's done a fabulous job really kind of re-identifying what the Rockets are, right? As a team that was known as a joke around the NBA to a serious team that is one of the best defensive teams in the league. I think as each season comes along and the Rockets set new standards for themselves, the expectations go up. So as we distance ourselves from the teams that we were under Steven Silas, the expectations for the team to look better is just going to keep mounting. And I think that's where a lot of the fan base is right now, is that, yes, we know we were trash 2 years ago. And it's, we're here now. And people are expecting just a little bit better on offense. They don't want us to be the worst shooting team. They don't want us to be a offensive team that is, lower third in most offensive categories. And I understand that. There's a lot of factors that go into that. Including the personnel of the team, including the coaching philosophies and what they're running. And is there a match between personnel and coaching? But with all that said, I think Ime has done a wonderful job. And as long as the Rockets keep finding ways to win, there's not really going to be some like big push for them to make a big splash and change what they're doing right now. So just to get that off. But, so far we've relatively stayed the same for the entire year. Looking at points per game, We are up 1 from 13th spot to 113, still relatively the same from the the first 20 games of the season. Effective field goal percentage and true shooting have both dropped in ranking. So we're 29th in EFG, which is our 2s and 3s combined, 50%, which is second to last in the league, which is not good. True shooting, we are 27th at 54.2, which is dropped 1. So we all know the offense is what the issue is. Let's look at some of these lineups. So our starters, net rating dropped slightly from 9.9 to 8.6. So currently the starting five for the Rockets is the 34th best lineup in the NBA. This is not the 34th best team starting five in the NBA's lineup. So lineup include bench lineups, include any combination of 5 players by any team. There's some teams like Memphis or Cleveland or OKC that they have, for example, Cleveland has like 5 lineups in the top 10 in the league because they're just so elite right now. But for the Rockets, our starters, 829 possessions, 11.9 points per game offensive rating, a sharp drop in that. So we're getting worse offensively in that starting unit, and we're going to see why coming up. Defensive rating is actually improved to 103.4, net +8. So the offense is what's falling off. The second most used lineup in this for this time period has been the Fred VanVleet, Jalen, Amen in place of Dylan, Jabari, and Şengün. So this is due to Dylan's injury. This lineup, 148 possessions, has a 126.4 offensive rating, but a negative, a 128.4 defensive rating. They're a -2. This was a surprise to me, right? So the actual Amen in place of Dylan Brooks is not a good lineup for us. It hasn't been for us. I have my suspicions. Well, I'll talk about that in a second, but I'm going to give you a hint. It starts off with those first 2 guys on the graphic there with Fred and Jalen, right? Fred and Jalen. So at first, everybody's conversation was, does Jalen and Şengün fit together? Over the season, combing through the data, the answer is a resounding yes, right? So it's not an Alp situation. It is not a Amen Thompson situation, not necessarily a Jabari Smith. I think he's just kind of a supportive. He's interchangeable. It's come down to Jalen and Fred VanVleet. Their fit on the court has not been just the best for the Rockets. Some people have pointed this out early. Shout out to y'all. But as more information comes in, it has become abundantly clear that there is problems there with them, both of them playing on the court at the same time. And what we're going to try to do is try to figure out if we can get some information. Let's glean some information from the lineup data to see who's actually the one that's really the odd man out, or what changes need to be made. So what we're looking at here, this is Jalen Green with no Fred VanVleet on the court. In those minutes where Jalen is without Fred, he is a +5.8. So he is a positive without Fred on the court, a +5.8. And the most frequent lineup that he has played in without Fred VanVleet is the one with Amen at the 2 guard, Dylan Brooks, Jabari, and Şengün. This lineup has 101 possessions. It has a offensive rating of 105, so not great. The defensive rating of 95.9 points per possession, a net rating of +9. So it's still it's a very good defensive lineup, and 31st best lineup in the NBA. So once again, that same criteria. It's not the 31st best team lineup. It's just overall lineup, any 5-man combination. So it's actually better than our starting 5 slightly. Now, the numbers you see above the players' heads there, this is their 2-man on-offs, or their 2-man net ratings with Jalen Green. So when Amen Thompson and Jalen Green are on the court together, without Fred VanVleet on the court. So this is just isolating who does Jalen play well with. +7.2, which is good. That's a positive. When he is on the court with Dylan Brooks alone, without Fred VanVleet, +12.4, which is a positive. When Jalen is on the court with Jabari Smith, they're a -11.5. And then when he's on the court with Alp, a +17.2. So the biggest gain there is with Şengün. Now we're going to look at Fred with no Jalen Green. When Fred is on the court with the rest of the team and Jalen is not on the court, he is a +20.3, which is significantly higher than the inverse of Jalen with no Fred. And Fred and the men with no Jalen plus 15.8. Fred and Dylan with no Jalen's plus 16.4. Fred and Jabari is plus 15.5, which I'm not surprised by this. There's a damn near a 25-point net swing with Fred and Jabari with no Jalen, or where there's Jalen and Jabari with no Fred. And to me, the answer for that is because Jabari is dependent. He's a secondary player. He's not a initiator by himself. So a lot of his offense is going to be based off of the two-man game with Şengün and Fred. And he is one of the primary benefactors, along with Amen Thompson, of that two-man dynamic. Whereas when Jalen and Şengün run the two-man game, it's a bit more, I would say, if the two-man game between Fred and Jalen and Şengün yielded, I would say 70% of Şengün ending up with the ball in his hand versus 30% of Fred taking a shot. And we'll look at some of those numbers in a second. If it was Jalen and Şengün, it's probably like 50-50. And that isn't bad, and that's how it's supposed to be, the 50-50. The problem is Jalen can't shoot right now. Dude is not making shots. So if you're not making shots and you can't really facilitate, then those 50% that you get on the Jalen side of the two-man game really kind of is, a lot of them end up in missed shots or turnovers or a made bucket. Those players aren't getting those touches because a lot of the time when Fred does pass it to a Şengün, it does end up with somebody cutting or getting a outlet kick out for a three or something like that. So I think that may be one of the issues that I'm suspecting with that swing between Jabari and the jump in the men, and Fred and Şengün together plus 23.1. No surprise there. I think they play well together and when they're on the court together, Fred and Şengün and no Jalen. So now we're going to look at some of the other players. There have been some talk. It's the centers that Jalen has. He plays better with Steven Adams. Shocked to see when Jalen and Steven Adams are playing together with no Fred VanVleet, no Şengün on the court. So when Steven Adams at center, that two-man dynamic is minus 19. That's one of the worst two-man combinations. And same thing for UC Fred with Steven Adams at 13.4. To me, this is not a problem with Steven Adams. This is a problem with Fred and Jalen, right? What does Steven Adams do well? You think about it. Steven Adams is a screener, one of the best screeners in the league. And what is the purpose of a screen? To get a open shot for a ball handler, right? And he does a hell of a job doing that. The problem is that, once again, similar to the Jalen thing with the 50-50, if the guy getting a screen can't shoot, they're not making shots. If the guy getting a screen really can't finish at the rim as you would like, then what is the purpose of getting a screen? It just kind of gives you the illusion of, I have an open shot and I'm going to take this open shot. So what that does for the rest of the team is that you have our guards thinking, man, I got to take this three. Man, I got to get downhill. Man, I got to take this midi. Man, I got to get to the paint. And usually they don't convert that. So it's really like a fool's gold. And it does come down to the backcourt. They're just not making their shots. They're not hitting their shots. You can see with Jalen when he was out with Londale, who we haven't seen in a couple of weeks, a minus 5.7. Cam Whitmore minus 4.2. Tari and Jalen have a positive net rating of plus 5.4. Which Tari, if you're negative with Tari, then you just shouldn't be playing ball because he is just a instant positive net rating. You look at Fred with Jock Landale, a plus 20.6. Fred with Cam Whitmore, a plus 10. Fred with Tari Eason, a plus 8. So once again, this really comes down to Fred being able to more of a willing passer, not a great passer, and being able to not just crash out on the fact that he can't shoot, compared to Jalen, who is he's being bred to be a scorer. And if you give him these secondary players, even though they're functioning correctly, he is forced to kind of score because that's what his job is supposed to be. And he's not scoring well, efficiently, and it really hurts the team. And that's really a lot of what it comes down to between the two of them. Now, interestingly enough, when you put Jalen at the point guard position, because a lot of those lineups, the two-mans, he's either playing the two or to some other point guard. When he is strictly as point guard, and this has happened in 271 possessions, it's a net rating of 21.1, a positive net rating. 121 points per possession on offense, so a really dynamic offense, a good defense at 100.7. And I looked at kind of the breakdown of how we score when he's at point guard. We are 98th percentile on rim field goal frequency. So when JG's at point guard, he just gets to the rim. Like, he is going at the rim, attacking the rim. And the problem with this is we don't generate a lot of threes. Once again, when JG's at point guard, I want you guys to start painting a picture in your head. If you're picking up what I'm dropping, he goes to go get it. Like, he's gonna go get it, right? But a lot of times him getting it is at the expense of the rest of the team. And so it's like he has a scoring mentality as the lead guard, and his scoring isn't efficient. So we are literally living, when he is at point guard, you live or die by his efficiency on that given day, night, month, week, whatever it is. And I'll give you a little bit more later on, but I just want to get that out there. And second worst 3-point frequency, in order to generate 3-pointers as a point guard, as a lead ball handler, you need to be able to facilitate for your teammates, be able to read the defense, be able to understand how you're being guarded, and which a lot of these things are the weaknesses Jalen has on the court. And then just to give you another little tidbit, the 3-man lineup of Amen Thompson, Dillon Brooks, and Alperen Sengun, when they're on the court together, they are in 338 possessions, 125 offensive rating, 87 defensive rating, which is stupid. Plus 37. This is the second best 3-man lineup in the NBA, greater than 200 minutes. So this trio is, when you have them 3 playing in the game, you can literally put any 2 in those slots and it's going to be a plus, right? You can put any 2 in the slot and it's going to be a plus. And that's significant when you start thinking about how you want to build out this team and what type of players you need going down the line. So looking at our differential of starter replacement priority, you guys know this graphic if you watch some of my update videos from the past. If you look at the far left with the differential, the negative differential means that's how bad the team is losing when said player is not on the court. On the far right is how well the team is performing when the player is not on the court. The first 11 games, Sengun minus 39, Fred a plus 34. Fred was in terrorist mode, and Jabari was also in terrorist mode. You had Dillon Brooks in the middle there, and Jalen was really playing well in those first 11 games. The first 20 games, Sengun held steady as our hardest player to sub out, and if you guys watch the games, you would see this. Dillon Brooks had a really good run in those 20 games, and I think it's still going. Fred started coming back to baseline. Jabari improved slightly. Jalen improved, but still one of the easiest players to sub in. And then in this first 32 games, Sengun is still the hardest player. We're losing the game by 14 points per possession when he's not on the court. And then you have Jabari making a big splash here as a player that we can't sub in the most recent 32 games. Dillon kind of in the middle there, and then our backcourt is actually, when they are in the starting 5, when Fred's in the starting 5, we are actually not doing so well. And then when Jalen Green is in the starting 5, it's kind of gotten slightly worse, as we've seen, right? When he is subbed out, the team is a plus 20. Out of the starters. Now we're going to look at the team's clutch performance, which I think is really feeding a lot of the issues that we have in late game situations. So we're going to look at clutch minutes, 5 minutes within 5 points of the game. Right now, Rockets have an offensive rating of 104.5, which ranks 22nd, defensive rating 106.6, which is 9th. The net rating minus 2.1 in the clutch moment. So we've been losing those moments, those 5 minutes in the fourth quarter within 5 points of games, which is what we've seen a lot recently from the team. EFG, dead last, 43% EFG. That's 2s and 3s in the clutch. Nasty. That is dead last in the league. And our true shooting, which includes free throws, 2s and 3s, dead last in the league. So shooting definitely been the biggest issue for the Rockets in this stretch. And really what it comes down to is the performance of our players. Now, looking at individual players in these moments, I'm going to highlight some things. First looking at Alperen Sengun. Offensive rating 104, which is defensive rating 93, elite defensive rating there. Net rating of plus 11. Look at the assist percentage, 30.8% for a center, which is just extremely, just really, really great. Problem though, EFG of 41.2%. That is nasty work from your center, right? You have a center shooting an EFG of 41.2% and a true shooting of 46%. And a usage of 32.8%, which is pretty good. Like, you know, you want him taking those shots. But at the end of the day, if your best offense is a guy that's shooting a EFG of 41.2%, you're going to be in trouble, right? And you ask then, why is his usage so high? Let's go over to our guards real quick. Fred's offensive rating 104, Jalen's 105. Fred's defensive rating 106, Jalen's 101. So Jalen's beating him there in the defensive rating. Fred is a net rating -2 in these moments. Jalen is a +4. Assist to turnover, Fred elite at 4. Jalen at 1.5, not great. So not being able to facilitate. Fred assist percentage 17.8 to Jalen's 19.4. So Fred in these clutch moments is not over 20% of assist percentage. To me, that is very telling. It does speak to what we see. This is the CTE moments, right? This is what Roos would term Fred Jihad. EFG for your starting point guard is 31.8%. 31.8 to Jalen's 39. True shooting for Fred, 38% to Jalen's 52. Usage, 20% for Fred to Jalen's 27.3. A lot of the times when we are in the clutch, the ball is in the hands of Fred VanVleet. And when we are in the clutch, if the ball is in the hands of Fred VanVleet, your options are extremely limited in what you can do as a team, because his inability to drive into the paint and be able to create, and not only drive into the paint, but be able to drive into the paint and facilitate for the other players. Because if you look at the other players, Dylan Brooks, EFG 50%, true shooting 56%. Jabari EFG is not good, right? Not good, 33%, true shooting 42. Jabari's defensive rating in the clutch is bad. He gets hunted, but a lot of times Jabari is not always the one starting. He's a net rating of -10 in those moments, right? This is going to be probably a man or Tari, but even those have those issues, right? The problem with our backcourt right now is that they can't make shots. They can't make shots. They can't make shots. And if Fred isn't making shots, and Jalen, even though Jalen makes better shots than Fred, you look at the assist to turnover ratio and the assist percentage, Jalen is not a facilitator. So you have two problems here, right? The guy you expect to facilitate in Fred VanVleet can't shoot. So even though he's expected to facilitate, when he does take those shots, because he sees like Şengün is being triple teamed, whatever, he's not making those shots. He's not a great passer. So a lot of the offense kind of just stalls out when you take Alp out. Teams are going to just sell out to stop him. That's why the EFG is so trash, right? Because you're facing double, triple teams. And then you give it back to the two-man partner that you have, and they're shooting a 31% EFG, right? Then with Jalen's problem is that he is not able to read the defense, right? He's not able to read the defense. You want him to be able to make those shots. And even though, once again, back to what I was saying earlier, even though Jalen is making more shots than Fred VanVleet, Jalen can't read the entire defense to make the right play all the time in those moments. So you will live and die by what he does, right? You will live and die by his percentages on that given night. So if he's having a stinker, good luck, right? If he's having a good game, then you can just, he's making his threes, getting to the basket, you live and die. And that is no way to have a decent team. Looking at some of the other players, Amen Thompson net rating in clutch moments of -19. I think one of the worst on the team. And a lot of it has to do with his shooting and his inability to space, right? The shooting and inability to space has become problematic for him. We've seen it happen. We saw it in the Minnesota game. Him and Jabari were in the paint together. Their men totally sold out to blocking off the paint. And so that's a part of his game he's going to have to develop. And his assist percentage is only 10.5. So he has tunnel vision when he drives. As elite as he is defensively as a functional player, big, huge holes in his game. He needs to develop outwards. And then Tari Eason, good EFG, 50%. Shout out to men with a 95% EFG, which is nuts. Tari is probably our best clutch player. He's been missing. He's hurt. And I think towards right before he got hurt, he wasn't playing too good. And I think the injury was probably a big reasoning behind that. He is not available. So ideally, when you're in these moments, you want a lineup where you want a guard that can at least make their shots and at least one person that could see the court. And it does come down to asking the question for the Rockets is, when you're trying to upgrade this team, which one of these players is easier for you to upgrade and actually get the results that you want? And, all that to say, this is my theory, and I alluded to this last night on Spaces. So my theory is that between Fred and Jalen, they have redundant weaknesses in the fact that both of them cannot make shots. They also have different strengths. Fred takes care of the ball. He does make, for the most part, minus the clutch, he makes the right plays within the context of the offense that he's running at that time, whether it's a two-man game. He doesn't make all the plays, but more than likely he's going to make the right play if he's not taking a bad shot. Jalen is a more dynamic player that can go get a bucket, but he's not making the right plays, right? So slightly better shot maker, slightly better playmaker, to me, equal out to a very mid backcourt, right? Now, to me, the great equalizer, the question you have to ask yourself, if they are both mid, right? If Jalen is a net positive in the clutch, if they're both mid, but Jalen has a slight net positive, and when he has the ball, even though he doesn't facilitate as well as Fred VanVleet, the question you have to ask yourself as a Rockets, to me, this is what you should be asking yourself. Who is the long-term plan, right? Because to me, the reason why I think that the biggest upgrade the Rockets could make is upgrading the point guard position over Jalen Green is because Jalen Green is somebody you've invested a lot of time in, a lot of reps in. He's still very young, and he is a player that his weaknesses are things that you could supplement, right? Because he has other strengths that he brings on to the team. His defense has been much improved this year, and if you take the ball out of his hands, he can still impact the game. And I think there's flashes of that, what he's doing. If you give him high reps to be able to be on ball, there are some lineups that he can be positive in, even if it comes down to him being a bench player, right? If he comes off the bench. Regardless, to me, the investment in Jalen, his youth, the long-term plan, his contract, all that says that they need to really focus on prioritizing, seeing what having a great point guard for this team looks like. And if I'm going to make an upgrade, I'm not going to give up on Jalen right now just to say that, I'm going to keep a Fred VanVleet team, because Fred isn't really doing much in these moments that you need that dynamic ball handler to be able to do it, right? And so the way I look at it is that if all things are equal and in closing moments, in certain closing moments, they both play pretty much just as bad as each other, let the young guy get some reps. At the end of the day, it comes down to our backcourt have kind of the same weaknesses in that they can't make shots. I think Jalen is a little bit more dynamic. I think when you think about it, you probably want to invest more into Jalen because he's younger. But I think that right now is just that with Fred not being able to facilitate as well as you like and not hitting shots, and Jalen not being able to facilitate and not hitting shots, it really just comes down to who do you think going forward is going to be a better long-term investment. And if I had to pick, I'm going to go with the younger player, right? I'm going to go with the younger player. I don't think there's much Fred VanVleet can learn. I'm not saying, Fred is doing great as the culture setter, blah, 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 blah. But I think what we're seeing right now as Rockets fans is the upper limits of what a Fred VanVleet led team, where he is one of your best players. This is the upper limits of it. He just doesn't have that offensive bag to be able to do some of the things that we're asking him to do, right? And with Jalen, with his youth, he can learn, he can develop. You can take him to the bench and have him come off the bench. You can upgrade the roster with better players, and still he can learn different things just by being around the NBA over the years. Not saying that he's going to go to the bench or they're not going to trade him. I don't know what they're going to do. But at the end of the day, right now, the Rockets' main issue is the backcourt. And to me, if I'm going to make a replacement, I'm going to stick with this. I think the biggest bang for your buck you're going to make is upgrading the point guard position. If you upgrade the point guard position, that's going to impact every other player on the team, rather than just upgrading the 2 guard position. Because at the end of the day, if the point guard, the guy who's behind the ball, that's making those 2-man reads with Şengün, if they can't get the ball over to whoever you trade for and make sure they get that pass, not a bailout pass, but actually within the context of the offense, you're going to be back at square one, right? With a bunch of guys trying to make a bunch of hard shots without taking advantage of the gravity Şengün has, or et cetera, et cetera. Whoever the Rockets upgrade for has to be somebody that can read the game, that can play off of Şengün, that can capitalize on that gravity and also involve the other players. Not a lot of players fit that mold out there. So, but it all comes down to, are the Rockets winning? If the team is winning right now, there's really no need to do anything, right? You ride this out till the end of the year. You get in the playoffs, however, hook or crook, whatever seed you're in, you get in the playoffs. You get your experience in the playoffs. You get your data points in the playoffs. Then you can make an informed decision about exactly what you need. But I think what we're seeing right now is the Rockets' backcourt is really struggling, and it is the reason, in my opinion, why the Rockets aren't able to make those close late game efforts to win the game. Because when it comes down to it, if you're relying on a center that's 22 years old, that's seeing triple and double teams to be able to carry you home on a nightly basis in the NBA, you're going to suffer, right? You need guys that can go get it from the top of the key, that can get it, that can shoot, get to the rim, and facilitate. Until you have one of those players on your team, it's really going to be hard to win close games against really good teams. And, this is going to be something that's going to be a theme for the Rockets going forward. We're going to have the random Varus nights where we shoot, where we make shots. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the backcourt. And if it's going to be, for me, upgrade that point guard position, right? Upgrade. I could put Jalen on the bench, right? I could bench him. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're benching Jalen when the point guard isn't making the plays, right? So I'm not saying trade Fred VanVleet. I'm saying upgrade Fred VanVleet, right? So if the trend keeps going on with the shooting, with the inability to create in the half court for this team, that should be a priority for the Rockets. Get a point guard. Get a point guard to pair with your best player, which is Alperen Şengün. Get a point guard to pair with your best player, which is Alperen Şengün. I think that's probably what they're going to be in the market for. Now, I don't know what Ime views on this. I'm not sure. Obviously, once again, don't take this as, Fred is bad or Fred. Fred is, as you saw from the differentials, one of the most impactful players when it comes to winning. But when it's time in those fourth quarter, those clutch moments, you need guys that can score. And if the Rockets are going to take the next leap to become the team that we really expect them to be, you're going to need a guy that's a ball handler that can do that for you. That's what it's going to take. Now, once again, the stretch coming up for the Rockets, it's going to be tough. I don't know how we're going to navigate it without the assistance of some of these players that are missing. If we can get 2 games out of this, man, we've done a miracle. But y'all let me know. What do y'all think? Who is, if you're going to say that the reason that the Rockets have been struggling in the clutch moments, who do you think the reason is? Let me know in the comments and in the chat. If you are new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you like this video, make sure you hit the like button. Keep rocking with the Chop Shop. We're going to keep dropping that.
DJ Candlestick. It's the Chop Not Slap Show.